Good morning.
Good morning, coffee moaners. Good morning. Is anyone else constantly on the rescue remedy at the moment? Poor Mark. He can't even have it because it's got alcohol in it. But there is an alcohol-free one. That one.
That's good.
I am needing rescue.
I didn't realise it was actually a flower bark remedy.
I am needing rescue remedy. Oh, that one bloody empty. I'm needing rescue remedy.
I mean, don't worry. If you are an alcoholic, this will not tip you over the edge.
Well, no, some people can't even have one drop. Don't say that.
Well, okay.
Because there is the non-alcohol one, the night one. But anyway, yeah, rescue remedy is a way of like, I've used it for years and years. When I first met Mark, when you weren't a sober person.
That's interesting. Clematis is in it, and clematis was the last one. My herb, what would you call them? A homeopath / herbalist.
Yeah. But do you remember when I first met you? Like, God, what, 20? I mean, we've been using it, God, what, 30, 40 years? It's probably Kiki. But do you remember when I first met you and I just put it under your tongue and you're like, what the hell was that? He thought I was giving him some precursor to a shot because it was alcohol. But it calms us. What are you doing at the moment, folks?
You put all sorts of things in my body without me knowing what they are. I know. You know, it sounds wrong.
So open your mouth, put this in.
Yeah, bend over, shove this in.
Oh, God, we were laughing so much yesterday on Loose Women. Don't worry, we're going to get to the news in a bit, but we just have to have something at the beginning. And it was so funny. We were talking about sneezes, right? And are you listening to me? Yeah. You don't look like you are.
I'm totally listening.
What are you doing? You're going like that.
I'm totally listening and checking my ear.
I knew you were doing something.
Yeah, but I can do more than that. I've got the bandwidth to do both.
What is going on with your ear?
Nothing. Right. I've discovered because I did that.
So anyway, anyone who saw Loose Women yesterday, you would have seen we had such a hoot because we were talking about the Duchess of Kate. She's not the Duchess. What is she now? Princess of Wales, Kate. And she was on the balcony and she did this really, really delicate sneeze. Right. So then we were talking about sneezing and Ruth was saying how she now she lives on her own. She could feel one coming yesterday, a massive one.
She farted.
No, she was a massive one. And she just like was blah, and she just did this massive sneeze. And I said, oh God, don't. I said, you're getting me going because you're taking me back to when me and my sister, Dina, if you're watching, were kids. Nobody do this. If anybody is listening, do not do this. It's very, very dangerous. Right? But what we used to do is we used to open Kirby grips and then we'd sit on the floor opposite each other and put the grip up our nose that you put in your hair and go like this, just really gently around.
That is so dangerous.
Till we sneezed, right? And we would do that for ages. And I actually said into camera, my God, if Dina was watching now, she'd get euphoric recall. And I said, and I've got a theory on it. We were quite young. Now, they say that a sneeze is a millionth of an orgasm. Right? And I said, so that's what you were doing on your own yesterday, Ruth. And she was like, oh. Anyway, in the break, the floor manager, one of my most favorite people at ITV, Jack, he's wonderful. He came up to me and Jack is autistic and he has an incredible memory, right? Bank of anything. Do you know, Mark, he can tell you every single person that's ever won an Oscar. He can go through the whole thing.
Wow.
He's amazing. Anyway, he always wears a dicky bow tie. And if any of you have ever been in the audience, Jordan, you'll know this. You know, he's terribly nice. My dear ladies, would you like to take yourself up to the stage? And he's so charming and so proper and always wears a gorgeous bow tie. And he came up to me in the break. He said, actually, Nadia, there is truth in what you just said. And I said, oh, what's that? He goes, did you know that they actually test sex? Oh, God, what are they called?
I don't know.
Apparatus.
Toys?
Not apparatus. Sex toys. Guess where they're tested? Because obviously they can't test them in the place where they're really going to do the work. They test them on the end of their nose.
I don't believe him.
No, you have to believe Jack.
Why
Jack
would they
knows
test
everything.
a sex toy on the end of a nose?
Because, did you listen to the first bit?
Yes,
or were you
because a
checking
sneeze
your
is
ear?
a millionth of an orgasm.
There you go.
Yeah, but I don't believe
So
it.
I've been proved right. I only speak facts.
Absolute rubbish. They have away days and they all go away and they test them in the proper places.
I'm going to send this to Jack. And Jack, if you want to send Mark the research, Jack knows everything. I wouldn't believe anything that you said over Jack.
about sex toys.
And anybody that's here that's been to the Loose Women audience will know. Now, listen, from next year, there is no Loose Women audience, right? I am totally devastated by this fact. I can't get over it at all. Not only because the audience is so important for the show, like we always say, the audience is the fifth Loose Women, but also my dear friend Lee, I won't work with him every day. But get in.
And this is a helter-skelter.
Make sure you get in before January and get in to see the audience.
Abby Reed says it's true, and Summers parties do that too.
There you go.
Yeah, well, you're hardly all going to sit around in a circle getting your nuns out and start shoving
That's why
toys
you test
in.
it on your nose.
Yes,
which
in
means
public.
No.
You're not telling me that they've made those toys and no one has tested them anywhere else.
Well, maybe they have, but the initial testing is on the nose. Maybe that's what Jack meant. Maybe Jack was talking about Anne Summers parties.
Right. Okay.
Jack,
it
so
wasn't.
Sorry. Jack follows us on Popcorn Junkies. Mad movie fan.
I'll be a tester, says Hannah Needham. On the nose. And apparently.
Say hello to Jack. He's a mad Popcorn Junkies fan.
Oh my God, I feel like you could. Oh, hello, Jack. Sorry
Jack's
if I was
really
looking at
good
my
friend.
ear for a moment earlier. I do apologise. I'm going to need a lot of noses, says Stuart. If you put it on the end of your nose and you sneeze, what does that mean?
It probably means it works.
It means you've had an orgasm.
No, it means you could.
If you have 1 million sneezes, does that mean you've had a whole orgasm?
Maybe that's why people use snuff.
To sneeze. I can't sneeze. At the moment, I've damaged the lining of my heart. Every time I cough and sneeze, I feel like I'm having a fucking heart attack.
Yeah, because you've damaged it. Gemma, yes, that's true, Nads. I used to hold Anne Summers parties.
Yeah, but you're not going to, an Anne Summers party, of course you're not going to do it down there. You're in the group.
That's what Jack said.
Yeah, but they don't test them. You can't sell a product where you've only tested it on your part of your face.
Well, maybe he was talking about if you're buying it.
At an Anne Summers party.
Go and get some sex toys and let's try them on our noses.
They're all
maybe
under
we'll
your
do
side
that
of
at the end.
Does the size of the nose matter, says Kelly McKeever? What if you slip it up the nostril?
Well, you just always end up being too silly.
It's not too fucking hell.
You do.
Stuart G, I'm going to
Ellie
go
Jones,
upstairs.
I enjoy an Anne Summers party.
I'm going to go upstairs and have a look around in our wardrobe. See
yes.
see if
Okay,
it
right.
works.
At the end of this show, could people, whoever has got one and is not ashamed to say it, tell us if they've tried it. Tell us if they've tried it on their nose. We'll do that at the end of the show. Put down sex toys there. So
No,
we
I'm
remember.
not going to write that because the kids will look at it and they'll think, what the hell's going on? They had enough of a shock with where I went yesterday.
I'm going to write sex toys. I know, Mark went somewhere so fascinating yesterday. Right, sex toys. There we go. Right. Shall we go to misery now? Let's go.
Take it away.
So today we are going to, I'm afraid, be talking about the grooming gangs. Obviously, Keir Starmer has agreed to a new investigation, and it had nothing to do with Elon Musk demanding that he did. We've got a lot of thoughts on that and feelings on it. And also, Mark was listening to LBC yesterday, and there was a really remarkable young woman. And we don't hear enough from victims. She's not a victim of the Rochdale or the Rotherham, but she is a victim of a grooming gang. And she was just such an impressive young woman that we just wanted to play a little clip from her and have your thoughts on that. And it gives us a new, something else to discuss about the police.
But also, I think it's important to talk about, the Casey report that came out yesterday. Yvette Cooper was talking about it in the House of Commons. I listened because I was driving to and from out of London, so I heard her whole kind of announcement of what the 12 points that they're going to pursue and that and it just flagged up yet again the ethnicity topic and what a hot potato that had become in terms of the culture wars, in terms of we've talked about this before about the ways in which the fact that there's a predominant sort of emphasis, if you like, on certain ethnic minorities in certain sectors of society where these grooming gangs work, how that's been harnessed and used by perhaps the far right. but also the way in which actually the report as it stands seems to back up some of those statistics. So that's curious. But also, like Nadia says, we're going to listen to an incredibly brave and courageous and astonishing young woman who did ring in yesterday. I heard a whole kind of interview with James O'Brien, and she was.
I'd love to take her for a cup of coffee and a cake and just talk to her. She was just, obviously we can't play the whole thing, but really it'd be great if you did go and listen to it, because she's just really.
We're also now, I mean, in terms of other news, obviously the world is an incredibly fractured, dangerous place. We haven't stopped talking about the Israel-Iran conflict since it started. We are always focusing also on Gaza, and I have to say, to that extent, the Israel-Iran conflict has kind of eclipsed the news flow from Gaza. But only this morning, if we needed reminding of the brutality and genocidal nature of Israel, we have a massacre that has happened again. And as we speak, we have clips, trigger warning, we have clips of 47 at least people mown down by tank fire as they were going to get flour. This wasn't actually at one of the GHF age drops. This was different, but 47, and Nasser Hospital is absolutely overwhelmed. I mean, it's an absolute bloodbath, a massacre, a total massacre. And this is the country that everyone at the G7 is still saying we need to back up, support.
Because they're about to do it in Iran.
And they need to have the right to enact self-defense. It's almost like there's a schizophrenic sort of thing going on at the moment where everyone's trying to pretend, and this is part of the plan. Remember this around Israel and Iran. Part of the plan is to legitimize and eclipse the horror of the genocide, so that they can reposition themselves as the savior of the world, the West and the Middle East. That's what's going on here. It's a huge PR campaign.
It's fascinating watching it. Fascinating.
And so
never forget they struck them first.
Yeah. And
it's amazing watching the media try and shift it all around. And yesterday I heard Netanyahu saying, that we're saving the UK. There was a great guy.
Saving New York.
That comedian, he was saying, what? He goes, what are the UK? Iran? UK? Is that the first thing that they're thinking about in UK?
No, we did mention this yesterday. It suggests to me, and I'm pleased to see that people like Danny fucking Price are following up on this. We said it yesterday. It feels almost like Netanyahu is telling us something he knows could happen in America. Keep your eyes peeled for false flags. Keep your eyes peeled for false flags.
If nothing more, it's just fascinating watching it.
But
also, don't forget it affects us all, because we do not want to be in World War III. We have the right. We have the right to be very demanding on what is the actual truth. We have a right.
And of course, Donald Trump evacuated almost the G7 summit after dropping the agreement on the floor.
Tell me about this.
Between the UK, which bit?
Evacuated the G7.
So he left early. Early, and
saw something about Macron.
And Macron said, "Oh, he's going away to deal with the ceasefire." And Donald Trump went, "Well, no, actually, it's his truth." So
I saw this.
Iran should have signed the deal. I told them to sign. What a shame. What a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran.
I mean,
he also then accused Macron of being a busybody. And he said, I haven't gone away to deal with the ceasefire. I'm dealing with something much, much bigger.
Headlines again, headline hunting.
So he said he's issued an order to evacuate Tehran. There are 10 million people in Tehran.
90 million in the whole of Iran.
The motorways in and out, the roads in and out of Tehran are currently completely gridlocked as everyone is trying to evacuate like mad.
Another blood.
Israel is really kind of sort of proudly stating, hey, guess what, guys? We're pre-warning you all that we're going to hit you really hard.
Because that makes us the most moral army in the world when we do that. Hang on a minute, I'm going to kick you in the face. Hang on a minute, I'm going to shoot you while you get flour. Hang on a minute, I'm going to knock down your house. That makes you moral. Yeah.
So a lot is being. Trump wants a real end to Iran's nuclear program as US forces prepare to join the war. The problem.
Can I just pause you for 1 second?
Yeah.
I am right in saying that they do not have nuclear weapons.
They don't have nuclear weapons. They have enriched uranium. They have enriched it. And for 33 years, Israel and America have wanted to suggest that they've wanted to get it to weapons grade.
But they very recently had an investigation, had an inspection, and it was deemed that they did not have. Because you would think, if you're just listening and just kind of looking around, that Iran has got them like all pointed and ready to go, nuclear.
Iran was happy to sit down at the negotiating table, sit down and have a conversation with America about de-escalation and making sure that things didn't get out of hand and da-da-da-da. And what's happened now is, since Netanyahu has just randomly and willfully bombed all of their sites, Iran has now kind of gone, maybe we should consider getting a nuclear weapon.
Because look how vulnerable we are. We've seen what you've done to Gaza.
I mean, I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about this, Nat. At the end of the day, all of this is a distraction. I mean, Netanyahu is single-handedly the most war-mongering individual on the planet.
Yes,
I mean, he
wants
does
the
not
greater
care.
Israel.
He does not care who he takes
the land,
down.
the gas, the oil.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this situation with Iran is a total distraction, so that he can keep away from his potential court case taking him to prison for fraud and all sorts of kind of improprieties. But he's desperately trying to drag America into this. And I think the only way to read this is, there's very conflicting signals coming from Trump. The reason it's a difficult story to get a grasp on is no one knows where Trump sits on this. On the one hand, he told Netanyahu not to kill the Ayatollah, whereas Netanyahu said, but if we take the head of the snake off, then the whole regime will fall. There's a kind of sensitivity, weirdly, around Trump. I don't think they want to be seen to be engaging in regime change. That this is definitely regime change.
Is unbelievably expensive. That's a forever war that will cost the American taxpayers billions, and will get them where? Look at what happened with Afghanistan. Did that go well? Look at what happened with Iraq. Did that go well? No. And why would anybody think this would be any different? I mean, it is total madness to want to get into this.
Yeah, I mean, the other point to make out, be careful, because I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and make definitive statements about things, and we can't. It was really interesting yesterday, because I was driving in and out of London and listening to a lot of people who were coming on the radio. There were some people from Iran who were on the radio, and you could hear the way they were talking about Iranian culture, Iranian life. And the question that kept coming up, certainly from James O'Brien, was, so are you saying that even for you as an Iranian, the preference would be Netanyahu, essentially destroying Iran and bringing about regime change? And it quickly dawned on me, as it quickly dawned on James O'Brien, that there are many propagandists in this country,
of course,
who are working on behalf of the Zionist project.
Of course.
And so a number of these people called
in. Did James O'Brien say that?
You heard him in his voice. He went, so now you're calling for genocide in Iran. And you could just hear, oh my God, they're actually, so there is so the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of the Western media is trying to say that Iran is on its knees. And that's not to say that Iran isn't on its knees in some areas. That's not to say that there are huge parts of Iranian culture that are dubious and questionable in terms of human rights, as there are in Israel.
As there are in every country. We're going to go around every country.
Yeah.
And like when Netanyahu stands there and says, they will beat a woman for not having their veil on. Really? Is that what you're worried about, Netanyahu? Well, is that what your concerns are?
Well, let's just look at the scores on the doors for the last 20 months. In the last 20 months, I know Iran has proxy organizations, terrorist groups around, but the whole history of those proxy groups is indelibly entwined with the history of Israel's apartheid and subjugation of the Palestinians. So you can't pretend that it's just a simple case of baddie goody. Israel's hardly cloaked itself in kind of glory with that. But let's just look at the last 20 months and look at the CV. Iran hasn't committed a massive genocide. Iran hasn't killed over 100,000 people.
And 50,000 children killed and maimed.
And they haven't got weapons-grade nuclear weapons like Israel have.
And they haven't got billions and billions of dollars behind them like Israel has from America.
Yeah.
It's America. Just think of Israel as America in the Middle East, trying to completely rearrange the region. That's what this is about.
But
it's so fragile to do that. It
is that. But what makes, and we were briefly talking about this yesterday as well, what makes that slightly more complicated is any kind of regime change war with Israel does not float the boat of many of the MAGA movement. America first is not about starting another Middle Eastern war. You know, Trump spent many years talking about the waste of time and effort on Iraq, regime change. And to be brutally honest with you, these were, when he was saying all of that sort of stuff, it was anti-Clinton, it was anti-Obama. It was like, we don't want to get into this quagmire. And that's not for the right reasons. It's not for humanitarian reasons. They just don't want to get involved.
He doesn't want to get involved.
But he's got a lot of people behind him that don't want to get involved. And then, of course, he's got the Israel lobby that is pushing and pushing and pushing for conflict. And that's why I say, when Netanyahu keeps popping up going, they're coming to New York next, it's like I was saying yesterday, is he threatening America? Because it feels like he's threatening America.
Well, like he keeps telling, like that interview yesterday when he said Iran wants him dead because, and the interviewer said, so you have absolute knowledge of that by proxy. Yeah. And they want him dead because he is such a strong leader. He is such a clever man, like sucking up to him.
But don't you think it's interesting how they always fall into their own trap? So the word proxy is always seen as a bad thing, but Netanyahu admitted he has proxies. Yeah. So it's all right. So he's got proxies. I mean, you could argue America is his proxy.
So he knows how to play Trump like a fiddle, you know, like, oh, they want to kill you, so let's go to war.
So my point is that it's, again, the fog of war, the fog of propaganda. I think it's quite clear, and it's not surprising, even though Israel wants to keep kind of showing off about this. If Israel wasn't hurting Iran more than Iran was hurting Israel, you'd wonder what all those billions had been in service of, right? So, of course, Iran is being hit much harder by Israel than Israel is being hit by Iran. Iran is struggling to make any kind of major inroad into the Israeli defense. And that's not surprising, because Israel is, after America, the most sophisticated armed force on the planet. They have an Iron Dome. They're you know, they should be protected.
That's why it was so extraordinary. It took them so long to have any responses on October the 7th.
Absolutely.
It's just so bizarre. Absolutely. So many hours it went on before they were able to see him.
So it's really, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, Abby Reid keeps asking, what do you think is going to happen next? I'm going to ask Nadia, what do you think is going to happen next?
Sorry, Abby, I have absolutely no idea, because we're stuck between these lunatics, and Trump is so irrational and so unpredictable. And yesterday, it was a news channel that I follow that I really trust, Breaking Point. You know, they had somebody that worked in the administration, and he was a very, very thoughtful person, seemed very smart. He wasn't extreme, and he just kept saying over and over again, you know, really, he didn't want to get into this. He doesn't want to be in this war. Trump does not want to be in this war. And I was like, wow, because I never know. I think he wants every war, because I think he wants headlines.
I don't think he does.
But something about the way this guy was talking about it made me think, oh, maybe there is some truth in that, because when you hear the kind of numbers of the dollars that it's going to cost to be in this and to maintain it and maintain a regime change, billions upon billions and billions, we know that Trump is very transactional focused, very financially focused. And if he's suddenly got to start taking all that money over to Iran, just think about the way he thinks. Don't you think? It just makes me feel like maybe he will put a stop on this. But then he gets egged on so easily, doesn't he? And he loves the headlines. Like, wait, something big's going to happen. Something really big's going to happen. Then all the headlines happen, and then his ego's up again. So,
well, what I would say in that, what I would say, the other thing that complicates things is very little is going his way. Nothing he said or promised. He'd solve Ukraine in a day. He'd bring us the Gaza Riviera. Tariffs. What tariffs?
Even his birthday celebrations.
Birthday celebration was a fizzle.
Every time they go to court, he loses, because there's so many court cases going on about these people being taken out.
I'm going to give you a bold prediction. I'll tell you exactly what I think is going to happen. I think there is going to be a false flag event, and that could be a false flag event that happens in America, or it could be a false flag event that happens with an American base in the Middle East. I tell you what will happen is, if Netanyahu wants America in this conflict, he will get them into this conflict. And I think that's desperately what he needs. It's definitely what he needs. He's telegraphed to the world It's coming to America. It's coming to New York.
UK.
It's coming to
We're
Europe.
saving you from cells.
Yeah.
There'll be whole new cells of terrorists. Well, what's the best thing to do is what you're doing to create more bloody terrorism is you're terrorizing people. You know, there's going to be millions upon millions of refugees from Iran. You're causing this. But at the same time, he's trying to make everybody feel that their fight is also with Iran. Our fight's not with Iran. It's like somebody was saying brilliantly yesterday, the American people who are not going to get Medicare and can't get their food stamps, do they really think Iran is their biggest threat? No, they don't. The biggest threat is their economy and about whether they are actually going to get, you know, all the things that Trump has promised.
I think the
Same
one thing
here.
I think
Nobody's thinking about Iran here.
Do you want to read this comment out?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I was Laura Lou. I was thinking about Keir Starmer. Do you think he's ignoring all the marches, siding with Israel because he knows we'd be destroyed if we stood up to Netanyahu? I think that don't think of Netanyahu. When we say Netanyahu, we think of America. And I think if they say anything, I think a boot goes down on their neck as fast as.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll give you a little. I'm going to show you a little clip to tell you exactly what's dictating Keir Starmer's policy on Israel.
Much. We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is sorry about that. This is it.
A very important document.
That sums up.
A little windy out here. Give me that. We just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union, and it's a fair deal for both. Going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income. And we have many other ones coming.
I just want to just pause for a moment. The reason he said the EU and made the mistake, because of course UK isn't in the EU. I tell you what was going on for him there exactly, because he's incredibly astute about the setting of everything as it appears on camera. He was fucking grief-stricken that he dropped that because he knew that was the story, and that wasn't cognitive decline. That was him just totally distracted by the fact that shit. That looks so awful. But what I tell you is really symbolic.
Said sorry.
But I tell you what's really symbolic about that footage. The image of Keir Starmer bending down and picking up these pieces of paper that amount to fuck all, because essentially everything in the world is worse off since Trump came in because of the baseline tariffs. Okay, they're better than they were going to be. But if you want to know what our policy on Israel is, go back to the GIMP analogy. There was Starmer suppurating, picking up, and then listen to him. How many times he says Donald? Listen to this.
The level of enthusiasm is very good, but the relationship that we have is fantastic. So I just want to congratulate you.
But Donald, thank you very much. This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace, our really important agreement. And so this is a very good day for both of our countries, a real sign of strength. So thank you again, Donald.
Oh, it's so excruciating. It makes me so embarrassed.
I'm cringing.
You can hear the squeak of the latex as he moves around, Keir. It's so gimpy. I'm sorry to use that as an analogy.
But why can't we have any blue sky thinking if we are so reliant on America and America can change their mind every 2 minutes with Trump, and Trump could get in for another 4 years, shouldn't we be thinking about how are we going to stay up his arse? I mean, I don't know, because I don't know anything about the politics. I'm just saying, just from a lay person, I look at that and I think that is crazy, because this man could go upstairs, turn around, make himself a coffee and change his mind about everything. We're so reliant.
Baked into that document is an agreement and an understanding that Labour and Starmer must not move an inch on Gaza or Israel. We are frozen. We are stopped. We are frozen in aspect. We cannot move. And as we said 2 days ago, you just have to accept our government is compromised and it is entirely corrupt when it comes to
We're
the
America
Israel
as well. We just
situation.
say America is the whole world because we have to all do.
Because
what
once
America
you
wants.
accept that and we stop asking rhetorical questions, we can move on, because it's like, right, okay, so we just need to keep spreading the word that we are totally a bust flush, because that's exactly what we are.
Abby Reid, Trump has just said that he wants a real end, not a ceasefire in Iran.
It's a real end.
Wow.
Not a ceasefire. A real end. Well, unfortunately,
Regime
my worry
change.
about that is that if he's telling everyone to leave Tehran, I mean, I had a moment this morning where I thought, could Israel consider using a nuke on Tehran?
That's my fear.
I mean,
isn't that your fear?
Well, I mean, if they did, I mean,
I don't know, because I just don't know enough about it. I don't know whether that's even feasible. I don't know. But... Imagine being in Iran now.
So
imagine,
shocking.
just more terrorizing.
In other news, this is a clip of Iranian state TV. Remember, killing of journalists and communications is an international crime.
But not if you're
Iranian. So
$250 journalists murdered in Gaza. Let's not forget.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Let's not forget those brave.
Okay,
brave
so just pausing on that. In terms of Gaza, we have had a massacre again this morning. I'm now going to show you, trigger warning, a clip from Nasser Hospital. 47 people confirmed, at least 47 people. Middle East Eye have shown it. 47 people at least dead. Over 300 rushed into hospital. The emergency services totally overwhelmed and unable to cope. Wow. Abby Reed, I just want to read this. Nadia's going to read a written testimony of what it's like at these bait stations. Abby Reed saw a video by Anonymous. Oh, Anonymous, the digital hacking, do you remember, during COVID, saying that there's sexual blackmail involved and there will be a false flag in the USA very soon. I'm telling you it now. We called out 3 days before Israel attacked Iran, before anyone else was... We named it, we called it, we said it. There's no fucking joy in that. But the point is that none of the mainstream media is sophisticated or nimble enough to consider anything other than the press release that's placed in front of them by Israel or America or our government. There is no journalism happening in this country. There is no inquiry. There is no interrogation. There's no questioning. And if you do, you're characterized as some fucking mad bastard on YouTube or something like that. So thank you for sharing that detail, Abby. Let's just keep watching this space. This is incredible.
This is from an account, the Jewish Zionists, anti-Zionist network, and somebody called Mo Zarai, who says that he is talking about his brother. My brother spent the night near the aid distribution camp in Netzarim, I think you say, and this is what he said when he returned. It felt like I was in an episode of Squid Games. Thousands, tens of thousands sleep near the gate waiting for sunrise because the amount of food being distributed is so limited. I arrived at 2 a.m. and as dawn broke, a quadcopter drone, terrifying over your head, approached the crowd and spoke in Arabic. You will now enter to receive the food. There is a limited time. You must all leave before it runs out. You must all stick to the time. Everyone gets up, taking off their shirts to turn them into makeshift bags for cans of beans and sacks of rice. An employee from the American company waves his hand for people to enter. People rush in, screaming. It felt like the day of judgment. We enter a large yard surrounded by iron fences. U-shaped tables are stacked with everything Gazans long for: rice, oil, sugar, chocolate, flour. And because the supplies can only feed a few hundred, the yard turns into something like a Roman gladiator arena. Whoever loses, their family will sleep hungry tonight. When the time runs out, the quadcopter comes back again, ordering people to retreat and leave the yard immediately. No one listens. Everyone is busy picking food up off the ground. I saw a woman and her child collecting grains of rice mixed with sand, pouring them into a sack they were carrying. Then an Israeli tank takes position on a nearby hill overlooking the distribution point. It opens fire on the crowds. People scream and run. No one cares about anyone else. They step over the bodies struck by bullets. Everyone is just trying to survive. Death traps, not aid distribution points. And the thing is, there are so many respected charities, organizations that are saying the same. Doctors, no respect for doctors anymore, no respect for charity organizations. All we must adhere to is whatever, as Mark says, press release that the IOF give. So
someone just made a really good point. I think it might have been me too. In Squid Games, there are rules, but in the Hunger Games, there aren't.
You're better off in Squid Games.
Yeah, Squid Games is it's quite stunning, shocking, and just intolerable. But yeah, so as we speak, do not take your eyes off Gaza. That footage you just saw there, it is a live. It's a live situation where people are being obliterated, killed, destroyed, slaughtered. Aid is being used, and of course, the entire world is pivoting towards the Israel-Iran, and that is what Netanyahu is banking on. Netanyahu is banking on this idea, this narrative that he is somehow saving the West, saving the region. And I have to confess, it's unforgivable the extent to which the other Arab nations and countries around there are complicit in this. Then even if they can't budge too much with America, I think they could even be delivering a little bit more rhetoric to kind of push back against this sort of assumed kind of arrogance of Israel. It's just quite shocking. Helena B,
what can we do?
Keep talking.
I feel
sharing.
that, like Mark and I have found what we can do, and that is we just share what we feel and what we see, and we have brought many people to a new way of thinking, and many people to just looking further. Don't just believe us. No.
Not
just
at
say
all. A lot. Go to other
just
sources.
To look at other sources, to stay aware, because this does affect. Do you remember when it was just a little thing in Gaza, and then it was a big thing in Gaza, and then it was, and we kept saying it will affect the whole world. The world is like this, and we owe it to our nieces, our nephews, our children, our grandchildren, our future generations to, when you look at how many people across the world are not having this, they are marching, they are speaking out, they are boycotting. I was talking to my dad yesterday. He said, there has never been so much awareness of the truth of colonialism and what is going on out there in the Middle East. And eventually, the only thing will shift this is the people, because the people outweigh the leaders.
Yes.
And so whether that is by marching, by fundraising, by demanding from your news channels and newspapers and sharing and saying, listen to this, and talking to other people, because it spreads. It's like I always say, it's the pebble and the ripples effect.
But I have to say, and I'm just wanted to talk personally. I'm not talking on behalf of me and Nadia. I want to talk for myself. I genuinely this morning felt I'd hit a little bit of a kind of limit on things, because, and not a limit on what one can tolerate, because there's you look at the footage and you think, fucking hell, this is what, how can I say that when they're going to, in terms of being able to offer routes out of this, or ways out. Someone's just said something that's really resonated for me there, and I want to read it. Patman 67, I'm too old to be violent, but I can't see any other way now. Peaceful protest doesn't bother them. God forgive me for thinking like them. And I'm not in any way concurrent. I know what you're saying there. I think the West, and I think our governments, and I think Israel, whilst they might in essence potentially win the war or win the battle, they won't win the war, because I think a genie has come out of the bottle in the West and around the world. We talked much about the Arab Spring when the Arab Spring happened. I think what you're going to find is a Western spring, where for none of us do these governments represent us. For none of us does the media articulate anything other than just the received shit that comes down from the government. We are all smelling a rat. We are all feeling that the right to protest is being infringed upon and egregiously kind of narrowed. We are not being heard. We're not being listened to. It doesn't matter if in our millions, in our thousands, in our gazillions, we stand in the streets. Nothing seems to change. Now, that doesn't mean nothing does change. But if nothing changes enough, the genie that comes out of the bottle is profound. It could be profound. And I think the intolerance with the system is spreading. And I would like to think, okay, well, maybe what comes out of this is a whole range of, say, new independent news gathering, that places, forums like this, and the podcast that you've just said is really...
That is true. I mean, you know, people are going to, you know, you just got to look at America. Look at Gavin Newsom, that he went straight first. He didn't go to the legacy media. He went to the new media. And I think that I do believe in empowering the people. I do believe that. I do believe that as you see this spreading across the world, most people knew nothing of the Palestinians' plight. And now a huge part of the world does. And through them, through the Palestinians, we are, you know, the curtain is being drawn on so many other things. And I think change is never painless. And I believe we're going to go through such a painful time. And the first ones to be doing that, you know, are, well, not the first ones. If you look at colonialism across the world, I mean, let's not get into what's going on across all the world. But there is a lot of suffering. And I believe that we're going through, and I believe that there is a real chance of a new light. All these old leaders are going to have to go. These old white men that are only looking after their own interests. Young people don't want that. Yeah, young people are sick and tired of it. They're sick. I think there's going to be a new movement, and I think there's hope for change. I believe.
Okay, well, I was just looking at the time. We do need to move on, so we're going to move on to the very heavy subject, the grooming gangs situation. This is the announcement that the Casey report that was read through and delivered to the House of Commons yesterday by Yvette Cooper. I listened to it. I thought every single point that it's making is valid and strong, and all of the recommendations need to be enacted. I think what's come out of this grooming report already is an acknowledgement that the problem is such a tricky thing. You know, there's an acknowledgement that there have been decisions made by various authorities in the spirit of feeling like they needed to protect, and this is in the report, this is not me saying it, protect certain kind of communities from adverse publicity. So there is a perception and a feeling amongst a lot of people who've been demanding an inquiry and have been attacking the Labour Party, attacking Labour authorities, because they felt that certain communities, ethnic minority communities, were being disproportionately protected from the limelight. Abby Reid made a point. There's still no definitive statistics on the makeup of all grooming gangs that there are in this country. There isn't. I mean, the report both on the one hand says there's not enough data to tell us how much of an ethnic problem it is, which means equally there's not enough data to tell us how much of a kind of indigenous to, you know, this country the problem is. But what they have found is that there have been instances, certainly in Manchester and West Yorkshire, where certain communities have been protected. So that's obviously a hot potato, and I'm not really wanting to comment on the rights and wrongs of that, but the reason that's a hot potato is that I think the far right have seized upon certain elements of this story, I think, for political gain. And I think the thing that Casey herself said this morning, Louise Casey, which I think was a really valid point, she said she was disappointed to see Kemi Badenoch turning it back into a political football yesterday. It would have been nice, she felt, Casey, who did the report, if all parties could, for the sake of the victims alone, have just got behind this and said, okay, let's stop saying you should have done it then, you should have done it then, we should have done it then. Let's face it, the Tories were in power for however long and they did nothing. Rather than pointing the finger everywhere, and actually the fact that it's happened, I thought Yvette Cooper was, I haven't got a lot of time for any of the Labour Party at the moment. She was incredibly powerful, incredibly strong in the reading and the telling and in the invocation of what Louise Casey had reported. It's interesting that from the woman herself, I thought this was the most telling thing, that Louise Casey, who's gone through it, she criticises the Tories for politicising her grooming gangs report and said she would, I just want to read what she said. I feel very strongly on issues that are as searing as people's race when we know the prejudice and racism that people of colour experience in this country to not get how you treat that data right is a different level of public irresponsibility. Sorry to put it so bluntly. I didn't put it that bluntly yesterday, but I think it's particularly important if you're collecting those sorts of issues to get them 100% right. If you're not getting them 100% right, please don't use them to justify another position, which is potentially what happened. So, you know, and she's just really disappointed that, you know, still the Conservatives are getting political advantage.
Well, it makes me sick to my stomach because, you know, what these girls went through and what anyone that has, you know, experienced sexual abuse, why are they always the last ones to be considered? And we're not going to talk about any of the details of what these girls went through, but obviously we've had Maggie, you know, on the show on Loose Women a number of times, and she's the most incredible woman. The way that she has stood up for these girls, left the job that she absolutely loved, the misogyny, the snobbery that was involved right from the beginning and throughout this, just heartbreaking. The way these girls were dismissed, the way the investigations, hundreds of investigations, I'm hoping they are going to reopen. She said that were closed too early. You know, the way that it was known that these girls from very young age, you know, there's piles of reports from the sexual health clinic of the same girls, of a group of girls coming in saying they had the same boyfriend, you know, with all sorts of things that have gone on for them, horrible things and abortions and everything. And she's got this pile of evidence, dismissed, not thought about. And then when these girls got to 16, it was then they were then able to completely dismiss them and say that they were prostitutes.
Well, one of the major findings of one of the 12 points that they're going to enact is a total decriminalisation of every single young woman or boy.
Yeah, because many of them have still got bloody
criminal records for prostitute, you know, so they've
were
been
beaten and
criminalised,
raped into stealing, you know, forced into stealing,
and to be honest with you, James O'Brien, again, the presenter on LBC, he's been focused on this story and all sorts of different grooming gangs and paedophile circles. He's been involved in a lot of the kind of press and coverage and sharing and publicising of these things. He was the guy who very, very early on in one of the kind of paedophile rings that was being discussed around the potential of Westminster, this idea that when no evidence of a cover-up often means that a cover-up has been successful. It doesn't just mean it didn't happen just because there's no evidence of a cover-up. And he talked a little bit yesterday about how he's heard many stories about how the authorities, certainly police, were themselves involved in the protection of members of these grooming gangs, because unfortunately they themselves were exploiting, in some instances, some of these girls and some of these young women. So, you know,
my thing is, we hear over and over again, you know, that they didn't want to inflame racial tensions in the area. Okay, so if we're accepting that's why you didn't do it, then why were they so brutal to the girls? Why were they so brutal? And I said yesterday on Loose Women, you know, we all get a bit weary about hearing about, you know, investigations and inquiries and reports, because so often we feel like we're just being like put on pause, and then time goes on and people aren't so impassioned about it. And then what happens? They always cost millions of pounds. And then, you know, I said, well, what I would really want out of this is that all the girls are validated, that investigations are opened again and people are taken to trial and people go to prison, because these girls are seeing these men walking around, knowing what they did to them for years and years. They've waived their anonymity. They've gone through so much and they haven't been supported. So that's got to be done. But also, just on a wide, hopefully there are strategies that are going to be able to go to all police forces across the country. We need to rethink again the way we deal with women and young and children when they come forward and say a terrible thing has been done to them. Because as we say so many times on here, nobody we know has ever reported any sexual assault that they've gone through, or because people go, well, the police don't care, or it becomes really awful for the victim, or da-da-da. And this case in particular, I think, has really highlighted that, like, and some. And yesterday there were two of the victims were on This Morning or Lorraine, I can't remember, and it was so sad. Maggie was saying that a lot of these children that are in care, they're never touched because in care you can't touch them. You can't hug a child at school anymore. They literally have no touch. And so how that will begin, they all thought that these people were their boyfriends, and they were getting held, and they were getting hugged, and then of course that's part of the grooming, and then it moves on, and then at the end of the day, for them to be dismissed as nothing more than like dirty riffraff prostitutes. That whole journey is so heartbreaking.
So there, and that's the really important part of this, is there's the victims, there's the young women principally, but not just only young women, but that have been caught up in this horror. I mean, one of the parts of I just want to flag this up as a slight confusion. I mean, one of the parts of it, the report says that where they have the most data, which is in Manchester, West Yorkshire, and in that sort of region, it seems disproportionately more the grooming gangs are of ethnic descent, have an ethnicity to them. Okay, that might be the case in those regions where the very makeup of the population tilts more towards that ethnic group. As someone here said, I do remember us talking about this about a year ago, where they do have some statistics for the country. Those statistics to this day say that 2/3 of grooming gangs are white men. I think what needs to happen out of this is a definitive sort of file that defines the exact makeup, because until there's absolute clarity and transparency, it can forever be turned into a political, cultural football, I think.
And does that make young girls any safer?
No, exactly. But I think there are two sides
and what
of it.
we want to do is make young girls safer. And this street grooming, where they're picked up outside school, apparently vape shops are a great place for doing it, and around and about care homes, hanging around care homes, knowing that those girls are going to be vulnerable and they're going to really want somebody that's going to seem to care for them. Lee, that's my friend. Hi, Lee. Follow him on Instagram. He's always funny. Definitely also totally dismissive of working lower class girls. If this was a middle class girl, they'd have been listened to. And Lee, in this interview that Mark caught yesterday on LBC, that's what she says. She's from a different groom gang, wasn't she? But she talks about that. She said there were so many complaints made by us, from us, those in care. But it wasn't till a middle class girl with a family made a complaint that they then, and I don't know what gang this was. I don't think they stated it, did they, on LBC? But she said it wasn't until a middle class girl came along that they actually started to investigate.
Isn't it? It just, again, the class system. There are so many
snobbery.
Michu makes a good point. Could it be in those regions the police more consciously record for ethnicity? And what does that say about the police? Yes. So actually, they're more readily willing to report, because this is the other part of it that doesn't really stack up and make sense to me. I understand the Tories wanting to say Labour authorities were concealing the ethnic groups because they didn't want their data. But I'm okay, and this is a gross generalization. I'm not speaking for all police, but I certainly know in London and in most ethnic minorities have a very suspicious relationship with the police, because the police aren't sort of they're not garlanded in kind of race equality particularly. So I think, again, you're right. Maybe there has been an emphasis on reporting that they are of ethnic minorities in that area, but kind of weirdly that detail. I think the very thing that the Tories and the right wing are seizing upon as a cultural football reveals actually the fact that the opposite, that there's been a concealing of the problem with white grooming gangs.
That one from Scotland, that grooming gang. Oh, Yasmin, Salim, the only hugs I ever had as a child was from my school teacher, Mrs. Bentley. Mrs. Bentley.
Send it,
because you're not allowed to now at school. And I wanted to just, was it Kelly? Kelly, who was in care.
Most of the people who are in care with me are either dead or ended up in prison.
Our care system is so fucked, isn't it? Kelly.
I'm going to play this clip, which is about a minute long. And this is just a pull together of some of the moments from this woman who rang into James O'Brien yesterday. And
she's we were so impressed by her, weren't we? She just had a horrific time, and is just so, my God, what a survivor thriver. That's all that I will say. And it started with her very young. And she said, there was something so amazing about having somebody like waiting for you. It was just with a packet of fags, but that was kind of like a care. There was to be somebody at school, and we knew he was a bit weird, and it started when she was 10 or 11, and they'd take her places, And then one day he drove her out into the middle of nowhere, and that's where everything changed.
I'm going to put a link in the description box here, and I will make sure I do it straight afterwards for the full interview. I'll tell you why. It's a top drawer example of a sensitive, tender interviewer catering for the needs and what was being said live. It was incredibly.
She did this live.
Yeah.
And but when we were younger, when I was like 13, 14, the police used to pull us over in his car. You know, they all kind of knew of him, would just pull him over, take him out of the car, talk to him, then he'd get back in the car. They'd never really talk to us. I think I had the thought that because I was, you know, like in homes and hostels and had a social worker, you know, I wasn't the most amazing example as a child, that, you know, they probably just thought I was riff-raff and disposable because that's how I felt like I was treated, because I believe that what actually got him, you know, arrested and actually sentenced was a lot of victims came forward, but the main victim that came forward, you know, came forward with their parents and came from a good background. And then it was seen to have taken seriously when not just myself, other people I think had reported him. So, you know, it kind of, I just feel like a lot of police, maybe they've got a jaded opinion of kids because, you know, like...
Kids in care.
And she said, you know, that many times her and a social worker reported to the police and nothing was ever done. Just like the Rotherham and Rochdale case.
Over half of the people who lived in the homeless hostel with me were care leavers because most children moved from the care system straight into the homeless one. Or the prison system.
Because it stops dead at 18. So, you know, when I think about how much our girls still needed us as 18, somebody's just decided that you can look after yourself at 18.
The groomers, DP, really good point. The groomers groom and set themselves up as caring people initially. They're not like obvious villain types. People aren't stupid, but they prey on vulnerability. All young people should be warned of the signs.
And as she said, you know, we knew he was a bit weird. We knew he wasn't right, but there's just something so just something, such a need, isn't it? If you haven't got anyone that you think's there just for you. And don't forget, they always make out to these girls that they're their boyfriend. And they're the only one.
Connection. We're seeking connection.
So thank you so much, guys. Please do hit the subscribe button. And of course, it stops at 16. Sorry, 16. Oh my God. So guys, okay, it's just a little breath before then. Did anyone try out their sex toy on their nose? We said we would cut back to it at the end of the show, and I'm just wondering. I'm imagining Stuart G with his sex toy on the end of his nose. Did anybody? Also, guys, don't forget, we're going to put the links under here again. We've got the free event this Saturday in Sutton, a free event, which is going to be really lovely. For solidarity with Palestine, and then there's a paid event for Children Not Numbers because we are desperately trying to raise funds for pregnant women and new babies out there, and we'll put both links up. So Kelly
McKeever says hers has run out of charge because you've been overblowing your nose.
Just hit yourself over the head with it.
Yes, if you've just tuned in, you may be confused by nose sex.
I know. And please follow Children Not Numbers. Lots of you always asking, what can we do? Follow those accounts, give them support. Because as well, it's just nice for the people that are working tirelessly to just have that support and have like a comment and save the post and all of that.
All right, guys.
Lots of love.
Have a good day. And something will be landing later on the channel. Take care, guys.
Bye.